Well, we welcome everyone to Iowa Postgame with Coach Gary Close, and I'm going to just address the elephant in the room, Gary. I'm at a loss. I said something to you before we jumped on here. I have never, and I know you're going to say I'm probably being dramatic. I have never, ever witnessed a worse Iowa loss at any level. And I'm talking women's basketball, men's basketball, football, certainly. How in the world did this happen? Explain it to me.
Well, you don't want to make excuses. I mean, the bottom line is they didn't play well, and I think to a man they'll admit that. But I think a couple things. I think you get into situations like this and the break, and you know what type of quality practice they have. The guys are getting ready to go home. They got storms coming in. They got 3,000 people in the stands. You know, it kind of all adds up. And then the bottom line is you don't guard your basket and give up 55 points in the second half to a team that barely averages over 60 for a game. And when you do that, then you put them in a position where they can maybe pull the upset, and that's exactly what they did.
How'd they give up 55 points to a team that last year averaged 56? And I know they average like 60 right now, Gary. They averaged 60 for a game, and they gave up 55 in the second half. How does that happen?
Well, they gave up 20 layups for the game, and I think it was about even. I even thought in the first half Iowa did not play very well. I think they were fortunate to be up by 8 just because Eastern Illinois couldn't hang on to the ball. They had 12 turnovers in the first half, or it would have been a lot closer. Then in the second half, they don't turn the ball over, and the defense continues to be below average, to say the least. You give up 20 layups, and that just builds confidence with teams. And, man, God, if the ball's going in, they shoot 60% from the game. My guess is they won't shoot 60% from a game or 40% from the rest of the year. But when you're getting 20 layups, and all of a sudden you think you're a pretty good shooter, and confidence builds. And I also thought that Iowa panicked a little bit about 7-8 minutes to go in the game. They were still within shouting distance, and they just started scrambling defensively, and that hurt them. They took quick 3-point shots where I thought they should have mixed up some drives to the basket, get some fouls, get some point-blank shots, and those quick shots fueled more transition looks, and their confidence grew. And before you knew it, they were out of reach. I mean, they were soundly beaten in the second half.
I want to jump to something that probably you as a coach wouldn't even want to discuss, but since we're on here and we're talking about this game, not in the locker room, we're just talking with the fan base. How much of a blow is this for a resume? I know it's only December, Gary, but we've got to ask that question. How big of a blow is this?
It's a blow. I don't think you can sugarcoat that. I mean, most teams will have bad losses, quote unquote, on the resume. It won't be as bad as that, but they'll be bad. I think what it does is it reduces their margin of error in the Big Ten. Now they're going to have to win probably another game or two that they might not have had to have done if they hadn't lost this game. So I think they're sitting 8-4, 0-1 in the league, and so they can't go 10-9. I think 10-10 will not get them in the tournament. And so you're talking that would be 10-9. You're talking they probably gonna have to go 12-7, probably at the very least. Maybe 11-9, but that'll be risky. So that's where it's going to hurt. Is now their margin of error in the Big Ten is even a little bit less in a league that's really, really balanced, and wins are going to be hard to come by.
I was broadcasting. We've been broadcasting since 1:00, talking Iowa football and signing day. So I didn't get to watch every second of this game, Gary, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's why they lost. That's a joke, of course. I know that's
probably was.
But my thing on this here is exactly what you just said. I made the comment during the football show. I would guess that Iowa will have to upset maybe 2 to 3 teams extra because of this loss. Is that fair to say? Like you got to really make up for this. This isn't a matter of, well, just flush it. And I think that's reflecting what you just said. I mean, we've seen teams. We have a team last year that got in at 9-11 in the Big Ten. I think there was.
There might have been. I don't know if the league is going to have as strong a resume as it did last year. That's what you worry about. Now that could change, but the non-conference is about over, and so the chance of we got a few more chances to get some big wins. But now it's the script has pretty much been written, and so I think the league on whole won't be as strong as it was last year. Last year was incredibly strong, and so that's not a knock on the Big Ten. It's a reality with the amount of players that they lost this year and the youth of the league. It's going to be real balanced. It's going to be real exciting, but I don't think we'll get. I don't know what did we get last year. I think we got 9 last year. I don't think the Big Ten will get 9 this year, but I could be wrong.
I want to take a moment to thank Brad Van Meter and his team. Win or loss, he's here sponsoring the segment with Coach Close. Appreciate Brad and his team doing this, and again offering great rates on insurance across the state of Iowa, whether we're talking auto insurance, life insurance, renters insurance, boat insurance, etc. 515-256-6480. You can visit them online at bradvanmeter.com or visit their office in person at 4229 Fleur Drive in Des Moines. Gary, did they make
Corey, real quick? I've lost you. You haven't lost me.
I haven't lost you.
Should I retry, or I mean, I don't have to see you, but I can't see you.
Okay. Yeah, you're welcome to leave. Just go ahead and leave and then come back if you can.
Yeah, I'll try to come back real quick. Let's just try it again. I'll be.
All right, let's get to our first caller, who is on the phone line. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm, Iowa. Postgame with Coach Gary Close. Who do you got?
Hey, Corey. How's it going, Gary? This is Chris. I don't really pretty much at a loss for words on this one. I mean, been watching this team now for the Fran era for 12, 13 years. I think this is year 13, and the defense just doesn't get better. I mean, I'm not a basketball expert. I don't know, what is it? I was seeing some signs of improvement earlier on in the season, and then we get this effort. I mean, it's just shocking. Coach, what do you see in the defense today? I mean, it's just unreal that you can give up this many points. I don't care who's in this lineup. I don't care who's hurt. You can't give up 55 points in the second half to Eastern Illinois. I mean, what do you see in the defense?
Caller, first of all, thank you for calling in. Gary, are you with us? Do you have
Yep, we're good.
Caller, Gary had to jump off, fix a technical issue. Can you ask your question again?
Yeah, I mean, basically year 12, 13 of the Fran era, the defense sees some signs of improvement to me early in the season, and then we just see the same stuff again. Is it an effort thing? Is it a system thing? What did you see today in the second half? That's embarrassing for an NCAA tournament potential type team. I just don't know what to say. What did you see there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one thing that definitely was evident is how much they need Connor McCaffrey on the court. I mean, he's their best defender. He's their best leader. And not only was he not on the court, he wasn't even in the gym, I don't think. And so there goes your leadership, and there goes your toughness. Defense is toughness. Defense is just, offering resistance, and I think they got away with it in the first half because Eastern turned the ball over and missed some free throws, and they still gave up 38 points. It's a work in progress, and that's I think this is going to be a real eye-opening tape to watch, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of defensive clips because 20 layups in one game is an incredible number, especially against a team that is not very good. So it's just giving up too many baskets around the rim. They gotta stop the ball.
I think real quick, one last thing, and I'll hop off. But I mean, I think some of the fans don't realize quite how bad Eastern Illinois is. I know some people aren't on like Ken Palm and things like that, but this is like really just an unreal loss. This isn't just losing to a top tier non-conference team. I mean, this team is horrendous. They're like one of the worst teams in NCAA. Literally, I think had the worst offense in college basketball. Like, this is awful. One of the worst losses in Iowa history, no doubt.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the call.
Appreciate the phone call. And just real quick, I want to establish this. So I know I've talked about this, and I know it doesn't do any good to rehash it, but it is a valid point, Gary. I brought this up. When did I bring this up? Recent short. So I produced a short video on YouTube regarding this Eastern Illinois team, and I think I shared these numbers with you. And I know this is a different team, but for anybody who's not watched this show before or is new to this information, last year Eastern Illinois finished dead last in the Ohio Valley Conference. Their final net ranking was 356 out of 358. That's 358 Division I teams. They were 356. Their final Ken Palm was 357. They averaged 56 points per game. They ranked 357 out of 358 teams in points per game. And their leading scorer, who averaged just 8.9 points per game, was a senior and doesn't play there anymore. So now I'm no doubt that they're probably better this year, marginally, but I mean, it's
a tough one to explain. It really is. I think it's a combination that you give a team confidence, and all of a sudden you're in a dogfight that you didn't expect. I mean, I guarantee you they know Eastern's record, and the players do, and they know Christmas is coming, and they know this, and so they're just not sharp. And then you give a team a chance, and then it just snowballs. We played a game in Wisconsin at the same time. Ironically, we played not Eastern Illinois but Western Illinois, and they weren't as bad as Eastern, but they beat us on our court like 52-50, and we could not throw the ball in the ocean from the beach. I mean, it was unbelievable, and it just got more and more frustrating, and just built and built and built, and that's what happened today. And their best leader wasn't even around, and their best player obviously wasn't either. So those are excuses. They should not have lost this game for sure. But I know it sounds crazy, but it could be a blessing in the sense that I think they've gotten away with mediocre defense and won games. And maybe this is what it's going to take to say, look, we're not very good. And if we don't get better, our chances of competing in the Big Ten are not going to be very good.
Well, Gary, the critics will say that Fran's teams have gotten away with mediocre defense for 12 years. That's what the critics will say. So I understand what you're saying. I hope you're right. But I to the last caller's point, it's losses like these that kind of bring out the dogs. And the reality is, you see some improvement, and then something like this happens, and there has to be.
Our best dog wasn't even in the gym, and our best defender wasn't suited up. And again, that sounds like an excuse. They still should have found a way to win the game, but it has an impact. Now all of a sudden you're in a game, and oh man, we need Chris to bail us out. We need Connor to get us and they're not there. And now it falls on guys that have not done it, and they couldn't do it. And so we've talked about their margin of error being very, very thin, and losing Connor made it even thinner. And, there was nobody there that could step up and make a big basket or get a big stop. I would love to know the consecutive stops in that game. I bet it didn't get to 3, maybe 4, and that was probably early in the game. And they couldn't get consecutive stops, so they let them get right back in the game quickly in the second half. You build that 8-point lead up to 20, and the game's probably over. Now it's tied, and now it's a minimum possession game, and they've got confidence. And yikes.
We're going to get to our caller here in a second. Drill MVP says, I believe this might be the biggest upset in the history of college basketball. Is that overreaction, Gary? I mean, it's got to be close, right? It has to be. Numbers-wise, it has to be.
Probably numbers-wise,
I agree.
It probably is. Yeah, probably it's close. I think, Sham, everybody talks about Sham not beating Virginia, number one. That was maybe the biggest. And there have been some big upsets, in the NCAA tournament that would shock you,
Sure.
1 beating 16, 2 beating 15, and that environment, and the importance of that game. You see a lot of upsets this time of the year. I'm telling you, you see a lot of them. It's a hard time of the year to coach because you don't have their attention. Who knows what they're doing at night? And that's where you need leadership. And our best leader wasn't around.
Yeah, and just not to push back at you here, but you recognize, I know you acknowledge that any upset in the tournament is against a tournament team.
Yeah. But you've got teams, you've got teams in the tournament. Maybe they got an upset in their term and got in, and they're
Sure.
25-point underdog. I mean, Virginia losing, I'm guessing that was probably over 20, that margin. And you figure Virginia's going to be ready to play. It's the NCAA tournament. There's probably some concern that Iowa was not ready to play today. I think you probably could build a case for that. We don't know how the practices went, but this is not a good time of year to play. So it's probably good they got a little bit of a break. I bet it's a little bit smaller than it might have been, and they got to learn by it and regroup quick because now the Big Ten comes, and like I mentioned, I don't see an easy win on the whole entire schedule.
Let's get to our caller who's been on hold. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Gary Close. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Jared the actor. Am I on?
Yes, you are, Jared.
Oh, hey, Corey. Hey, Coach. How you guys doing?
Hi, Jared.
Good to hear from you.
Is that a trick? Is that a trick question?
Yeah, no, not at all. Corey, I want to start off by saying I bought some of your merchandise and sent them to my family, who's also big Hawkeye fans, and they really like it. So
awesome.
Much love there.
Appreciate that, sir.
You bet. So I was looking for the game. It was on CBS Sports app, and I have like every streaming service I thought around. Where did you guys find the game, first of all? Where were you able to watch that?
I don't believe it was on CBS Sports app. It was on BTN Plus, which is a subscription service.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, that's the one I don't have then.
Yeah.
But
It wouldn't have been on CBS because BTN Plus is owned by Fox. So.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, so I was just simply following along on the ESPN app where they just kind of show scores and updates and all that. But I could not believe in front of my eyes what I was seeing of them losing to this caliber of team. And, not watching the game, is there any context you can put into what happened? I mean, seriously, it's just shocking to me, and I think others, in terms of what went down today.
Yeah. Well, they played very, very mediocre defense, and that's being kind. They were horrendous from the free throw line, and that hurt. They gave a team that wasn't very good some confidence, and I think they panicked a little bit down the stretch in terms of shot selection and getting stops. And that's what happens. You gamble, and it kind of all breaks down. And I don't think there's any question that they really missed Connor, especially because of his toughness and his leadership ability. There was no leader out there to, hey, let's go, let's get this thing going here. They're kind of a rudderless ship without him out there, and they gave a bad team confidence, and it just snowballed. It was a hard charging snowball. I mean, it just gained more and more momentum. You can just see it. Shots got tighter. and they're fouling when they shouldn't. It just snowballed.
Outside of Connor being out, were they full strength still?
Chris wasn't playing either.
Yeah, Chris was out.
They probably don't lose the game if those two guys are there. I mean, that's an excuse. They should have won it without them. I think they would have won the game if Connor had been there, even if Chris had been out. I mean, they really missed his leadership and toughness. I think he would have gotten into a few people's face, and I think they would have found a way to grind it out, and they didn't have that. The rest of those guys are not born leaders, so to speak. I think they really missed Connor out there today.
They better figure it out quickly, Gary, because there's a good chance that Chris and Connor are both gone next year. So this group is going to be largely what this group was today next year, minus maybe the best player on the court in Philip Bracha. That's what they're going to be, and then a couple of freshmen come in next year. So, I mean,
that's part of the maturation process. You can't force leadership on people. That's something that's got to develop, and hopefully it will. So, time will tell as far as that goes.
Anything else, Jared?
Yeah, one last question. I mean, a loss like this, Corey, I don't know what you think, but for me, this boils down to coaching. I mean, I don't think other teams of this caliber would have this problem. The previous caller spoke about this is one of the worst teams in Division I basketball. And in order to lose this team, it's got to have something to do with lack of coaching fortitude or something to that effect. And just wanted to see if you agreed with me or not.
Yes, I agree. In this instance, I hope Fran took responsibility in the press conference. I don't know. I'm not speaking for you, Gary, but you're a former coach. But I can tell you from an outsider, I put the blame on the head coach here. If we can sit here and say, well, if Connor were here, we probably wouldn't. Iowa wouldn't have lost this game because he would have gotten. You used the example of getting in the face of some of his teammates. Well, at some point, Fran was there. I know he's not out there playing, Gary, but that's my opinion. This falls on the coaching staff, and I'm not saying fire Fran like some people are at this moment, but yeah, I don't know. Has anybody listened to the press conference for Fran? Have you listened to it, Jared? Tony, you're on the queue. Have you listened to it? We're going to get Tony's perspective here in a second, but I can't imagine what he said. I'm guessing it was a brief press conference, but I believe it boils down to coaching. And by the way,
I bet you, whether he says it or not, I bet he takes some responsibility for it. I mean, they obviously were not ready to play for whatever reason. We don't know what the practices were like. Sometimes you have great practices and you just lay an egg, and then sometimes you just can't get people to concentrate, and you can do whatever you can, and then finally it just takes somebody to knock you right in the mouth for the point to get home. And I'm guessing that's probably what happened. That they just didn't believe what people were telling them, and then they'll just find a way to do it. And unfortunately, they couldn't do that today. And that's why I think if that's the case, then this is a good thing to happen, because it would have happened in the Big Ten probably more than once, because you just can't play like that and win in this league.
And Jesse, he's right. This is almost guaranteed to be the worst loss of any team that could be on the bubble. So if you're Iowa, you better not be on the bubble in March, because this may be the backbreaker. Jared, appreciate you calling in as always, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Jared.
All right. Jesse says Coach Close's computer is working as well as the Iowa defense.
At least he keeps his sense of humor.
Brian says this is a good game to have on BTN Plus.
Well, that's for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Can you speak for a second on some of your experience with BTN Plus? Now that all the BTN Plus games are behind us, I don't understand.
I will say one other thing that some Hawkeye fans from way back will remember. We had a team in Iowa. I think it was BJ Roy in that group's second year, maybe third. We were ranked in the top 5 in the country, and we went over to Hawaii to play in a tournament. And that's the same thing as kind of goes around. You're out on the beach, and it's hard to concentrate. And we had 2 terrific wins to get to the championship game. And we played UC Riverside, who was not even Division I. And I bet you we were close to probably a 30-point favorite. certainly 20 plus, and we lost. Gave up like 27 threes. It was an NCAA all-time record. They were making them from 3, 4, 5, 6 feet behind the arc, and it was unbelievable. Everything was, when it didn't go straight in, it bounced in. It was incredible. And thank God it was at Hawaii at about 10 o'clock Hawaii time, because it was about 4 back here, and half the country never. How did Iowa lose that game? Where did Iowa get its loss? All of a sudden, and they had to go back and look at our schedule to see where we lost. So it can happen to everybody.
So that loss might be worse than this one. I mean,
it would be right. It would be real close. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No doubt.
I will say
it was a third game in 3 days, and that sounds like an excuse. It was 3 for them. But it's the same thing. You give up 25 threes and lose like 101 to 97, and your defense isn't good enough. So that was a crazy game. I mean, I would love to find out how many points did Iowa end up with? 82 today? 83?
83.
How many games have they lost when they've scored 83 points? And I'll bet it's not very many.
Recently or all time?
All time, and or with coach as the coach. I'll bet you they haven't lost too many games giving up 83 points.
No, I think it might be more than you think, frankly.
Yeah, I'd be curious.
Games, yeah. There have been Big Ten games where Iowa gives up 100. Minnesota's won. They gave up 100 to Indiana years ago. They do it at times.
Yeah.
I've never against a team that's one of the worst teams offensively in the country. You give up 92 to not only one of the worst teams, one of the worst. It's one thing if this was a team like South. Remember, I don't know if you remember this, but 2 or 3 years ago they played. I believe it was not South Florida. What's the Florida? North Florida. They played North Florida, who is known for shooting a lot of threes. Like if you play a team like North Florida and they just happen to make a bunch of threes, kind of like that UC Riverside team, and they're just throwing it in from everywhere. That's one thing. They're known for that. This is a team that is known for being bad on offense. They put up 92 in Iowa's gym.
Yeah.
And by the way, wasn't nobody at that game today. There wasn't nobody at that game.
Yeah, and you knew that was going to be the case. I
knew that.
There were too many factors to go against having people in the stands, and that didn't help.
Shouldn't have mattered. I mean, but I'm just acknowledging there wasn't anybody at that game. So, anyways, and by the way, one more thing. I want to, before we get to our next caller, let me just say this. I'm disappointed. I said this earlier in the day. I'm disappointed in the university for scheduling this game on the same day as National Signing Day. College football National Signing Day is a spectacle, and it is an event, and it's great promotion for your brand and for your university and your athletic department. To schedule a doubleheader with the men and the women on National Signing Day, I understand it had to be pushed up because of weather. Why even have it on the same day? That's frustrating to me. That's a discussion for a different day. But why they couldn't have figured out a way to schedule this game tomorrow or yesterday?
Well, you see, if they schedule it tomorrow, then the kids get one less day of Christmas break.
Well, then schedule it yesterday. Get it out of the way yesterday.
Yeah, maybe you couldn't have gotten them in here yesterday. I don't know. I mean, it's sometimes scheduling's not as easy as you think. I mean, putting schedules together is a pain in the butt. Trust me.
Can we agree though, Gary? You've been in college athletics a long time. Can you agree that scheduling it on National Signing Day probably isn't a great idea?
Well, they were doing it at night, so the signing day would have been over. And now they have a storm come in and they got to change it. So
yeah, okay.
I don't know that when you get into this time of the year, it's hard to get you're trying to get every game in, and the scheduling is difficult, especially around Christmas. It's not easy. You've already seen games canceled because of the weather and things like that.
What? Wouldn't have been great had this game gotten. I mean, in a way, it would have been great had this game gotten canceled. Just cancel.
Yeah, definitely, no doubt.
All right, let's go, Tony. Tony's on camera. He's got his Hawkeye from the Hawkeye of the Storm merchandise. First thing first, Tony, I want to ask you, you're a regular caller. You said you listened to Fran's press conference. Can you give us a summary of that presser?
No, I didn't listen to it. I saw some of the post-game quotes from the players, but it's looking like I looked through your comments, and I think someone said it was only like a 4.5 minute presser. I'm sure, knowing Fran, it was very quick, concise answers and just wanted to get out of there. Would be my guess.
Is it true that Patrick had the flu today? Is that a fact? I keep seeing people say that. Is that a fact, or do we know that's to be true?
I had your football stream going on as well, watching the game, so I had too many screens occupied to follow it on Twitter, but that's what people are saying on Twitter.
Why was Connor sick?
The wrist. He had the wrist.
Why wasn't he
that
there?
Connor was there. Connor was on the bench. He was there the whole game.
Oh, was he? I didn't see him on the bench.
Yeah, he was in street clothes. He was sitting next to who's that? The bigger guy, bald hair. That's the video coordinator or whatever I think is his name, right? Yeah. Is that the guy who's the video coordinator? He's been there for forever. He was sitting right next. He was literally the first player right next to the coaches, but he was in street clothes, so he just blended in because all the coaches are wearing street clothes now too. So he just looked like another coach.
Okay, so
that makes any sense.
That's a concern. That's even worse than Gary. If Connor's, I know he's not out there on the floor, but he was there.
Oh, he was there. Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
He was there, and you could see. I mean, I will give Big Ten Plus one thing that I really like that I wish I could have an option for every game is you get to watch what happens during the timeouts. They had the camera on the huddle for every timeout. They didn't have to cut away. Yeah. Oh, yeah. They didn't have to cut away.
Usually they zoom out. Usually they zoom way out, and you can't.
No, they zoomed right in each time on the huddle this time.
So was Fran ripping? Did he ever rip into anybody ever?
Not that I could see. No. Not that I could.
I mean, that's his pro. I mean, we rip him when he rips, and we don't rip him when he doesn't rip. So
we can't win.
There are times, Gary, where from the outsider's perspective, you feel like, well, if he's going to rip any time, it'd be now. So it is kind of odd the way he chooses, but I understand it's feel. And unless you're there and you're in the huddle, it's hard to know. Anyways, I do remember this real quick, Garrett, Tony, and then I'll let you go what you want to say. You probably don't, Gary didn't remember this because he was probably coaching at the time. You probably remember this though, Tony, probably back in 14, 13, Iowa was down big against Gardner Webb at home. You remember that? They were down Gardner Webb at halftime, but they found a way to come back. And I remember Fran saying after that, I don't know why this stands out. Fran said after the game, he said, I didn't talk to him any louder than I'm talking to you right now. That was not what we needed at the time. So I'm not advocating that he should have been ripping, but in this case, it didn't work. But that doesn't mean it was the wrong decision. Is that fair?
I did. When you get ripped because of a lack of effort or a lack of concentration. And I didn't. That wasn't glaring to me. It was a lack of execution for sure. So if you rip it, especially if you sense your team is pressing, and they definitely pressed the last 10 minutes, you could see it. And now you rip, and they're pressing. And it could be a total disaster. I think they would have been better off being down 20 at half than they were 8, because they didn't play well, and they had false. I think they had a false sense of security that we're up 8 and this we got this, and they weren't playing very well, especially defensively. And then the offense went a little cold, and all of a sudden you got a game.
Hey, can I get back on later? I got something I got to go take care of. I have
no, you got it now. You can't come back.
I'll be back. I will disclose it was the worst loss before I come back. It was the worst loss in the 2000 era. It was worse. It was worse betting spread wise. But I'll add on. I have a whole bunch of list of the stats of the worst loss. Yeah.
And Tony,
don't go back to 1987 or 8.
and Tony, you're going to close with that. No pun intended.
No, I will close with it. It was a good day. I got to watch Iowa basketball. I don't care win or lose. I enjoy the games. So I'll be back.
Good for you.
All right.
Okay. Kevin says that Houston lost to a 3-win ECU. I'm assuming that's Eastern Carolina team a couple of years ago. The same season we went to the Final Four. Good teams lose sometimes. Is that true? 3-win team and they went to the Final Four later that year?
Houston did.
That's what Kevin
maybe.
said.
That could be.
So
it happens. I know it sounds ridiculous. I mean, the last game, Coach Ryan coached, we lost to who did we lose to? It might have been Western Illinois again. We might have lost to them twice, and it's so bad he said, "I'm not going to coach anymore." It happens. It happens. It's no fun. Trust me, it's no fun. And boy, a terrible time with Christmas coming on. But we'll find out a little bit about them when they come back.
Is Rick accurate? I don't think this is accurate. I could be wrong. Rick says, well, when you live and die on shooting 3-pointers, there will be good nights and nights like tonight. They scored 83, Gary.
Yeah. What I will say, I thought they took some questionable threes in the second half, quick, that just let them transition even more. And that's where, when you're down or you're in a tight game, especially when they got down, when they got down 4 or 6, you could just see they were worried. And that's when one possession at a time. Let's get a stop. Let's get a good shot. And they were shooting it quick. Right during that stretch where it went from 2 to 4 to 10, and now we got a real problem on our hands, and they just couldn't get. I'm guessing the second half they never got more than 2 stops in a row, and they might not even have gotten that. I'm guessing they probably did, but and Eastern missed some free throws, missed some front ends of 1-on-1. I mean, they could have had 100.
And Spot says 20 layups. And here's the deal. This is nothing new. Gary, even in the games Iowa wins, like the Wisconsin game. Wisconsin didn't shoot the ball real great in regulation, but so many layups. What other than just saying it's poor defense, how do you explain that many layups?
Well, it takes time. It's you got to have good team defense. So it involves containing the ball. And what I mean by that is you just can't give straight line, pure breakdown drives. You got to be able to fan the ball handler to the corners and not right at the rim. And then when you do get beat, you got to have somebody to come over and help. And then you got to have somebody to come over and help the guy that's helped. So it's like 3 guys have got to be involved in stopping the ball. And if one of them doesn't do their job, then you're probably going to give up a shot around the basket. Now, a lot of the other ones were in transition where they sent like 4 and 5 guys to the glass because they were in desperate mode and didn't get the rebound. And now there's nobody back, and they're giving up transition wide open layups that just made it even worse. So it was a tough day.
I don't buy into Harpo's comment here. This is not an NCAA tournament team. No way. This team clobbered Iowa State here not that long ago. I thought the Wisconsin game, what was it, a week ago, a little over, it was a really high-quality college basketball game between 2 teams who I think will play in the tournament, or at least have a chance of playing in the tournament. They have a good win at Seton Hall, played decent against Clemson and won. I know they have a loss against TCU, loss against Duke. I think so far, up until tonight, they've looked like a tournament team. Not a high-seeded tournament team, but a tournament team. Is that accurate, Gary?
Yeah, but this loss, if you put a field together today, they probably are not in.
Yeah, I agree.
I would guess, but that's probably what he's mentioning. Now, the question is, can they get the ship corrected and get themselves back on track? And they can do that. I mean, they've missed some players. They haven't had their full team in quite a while. And we know their depth is not great and their margin of error is not great. And so, they've got to get everybody back and they got to get better.
Brian says, this is a quote, and I'm just going by what Brian says. He says, this is a quote from Philip Rabracha. We took them lightly. We were a little too arrogant after our win against SEMO. We were feeling good. We were up 18-4 today. We thought everything was nice and easy, I guess. We didn't respect.
Well, see, and that's what happens. You get up like 18-4, and I forgot that, that is the case. That's probably when my streaming was not working real well because you're not paying your bill on time. But when it's 18-4, now you think, oh yeah, geez, this is a no-brainer. We're going to cruise here, and then all of a sudden, it just doesn't work that way. So it's a tough one. There's no doubt.
Bob says that Fran had short, sharp answers on the radio post-game show with Gary and Bobby. I can't imagine why. So here's something. I didn't notice this. Again, I was focused on the college football show. Brian says, shout out to the fan that got kicked out for calling out their D. Hawk Love 23 says that's accurate. An Iowa fan walked down from section NN and chewed out the team for not playing defense. He was thrown out. Did you see this, Gary?
No, I sure didn't.
Wow, that doesn't happen every day.
No.
So
Especially when you only have 3,000 people or 4,000 people in the stands, then it sticks out even more. I think Phillips' comments are, right on. They probably took him a little bit lightly. I don't think there's any doubt. And this game will bite you when you do that.
All right, let's get to our next caller on hold. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Lomansky, Corey.
Hey, Lomansky.
I thought Fran's presser, I watched the whole thing. I thought he was cool, calm, and collected. I think sometimes we like to describe a person's personality one way and run with it. I don't think Gary Close every day is what we see on the show. I'm sure he has moments that are uncharacteristic of Gary, but Gary knows who he is. Fran knows who he is. And I thought the presser. Fran's seen this before. He's coached a long time. You can assess some guilt to his coaching. I coach middle school, which is nothing like college, but I saw my team that I coached for 3 years do this. But if you have any questions about the presser, he was pleased with the first half and thought went in the crapper on the second half, and he thought they played too much one-on-one basketball and didn't move the ball good enough, and that sounds like Fran's basketball. And
well,
I don't know.
I didn't watch the game as closely as you and Gary did, but what's there to be pleased about in the first half? You were up 8 against one of the worst teams in the country. I wouldn't be pleased. I can't imagine he was pleased with that, Gary.
He was probably pleased offensively. I thought they were pretty good offensively. And I thought they moved the ball pretty well and less dribbling and got good shots. And, they put up whatever it was, 42 or 43 the second half. It's amazing how this game is intertwined and you play poorly on defense and it seeps into your offense and vice versa. And I think at both ends in the second half, they were not very good.
Gary and Corey, the other thing he said, when the shots weren't falling, that got the other team out on a break. And you just taught Gary about everything's connected.
Yeah.
Does one thing lead to another? Like you can't hit a bucket. The other team runs on you. You're not playing defense. They get layups. I mean, their shooting percentage. Phillip is the only redeeming box score. When you look through the team, it's like, oh my God, who are these guys?
Yeah. Well, it's like we've said. I think it was more on the defensive end where they really, really suffered. And you're right. You take a quick outside shot or you turn the ball over. Chances are the team coming down is going to get a better look than they did if they're taking the ball out of the basket, or even if you're missing a shot around the rim. And so, especially from a transition standpoint, you get long rebounds. A lot of times a quick shot catches the offense by surprise, and now they're not as good getting back, and the balance isn't as good, and you give up wide open looks, and even worse, you give up layups. And, any Division I team, if they got their layups were unmolested. It wasn't like they had to make a tough shot over somebody. They were, of the 20 layups, probably 12 were just flat out dunks with nobody around them. They're not going to miss those. You might miss a layup if you're under a little bit of duress. And they missed a few when they were. I bet they missed 5 or 6 layups in addition to making 20. So that's how much court they gave up. And that is indicative of how well you're running your offense. When you run your offense more or longer, especially against teams that are pretty good defensive teams, you got more chances of positive things happening. 1, getting a shot around the basket. 2, getting fouled. you'll have a better chance of getting offensive rebounds if you run more offense because you're going to move the defense around a little bit. You shoot quick and don't make it, your chances of getting fouled or zip, chances of getting offensive rebound go down, and it just hurts your defense on the other end. So they better go in. And I thought when the game was still well in reach, they had some possessions where they shot some quick threes, and it went from 4 to 6 to 10 to 12, and now you're in trouble.
Gary, in your history, we're pretty snake bitten as far as Iowa fans in football and basketball. It seems like today. And how soon can you put your mindset of what you got as a team? Is it a third through the Big Ten schedule? You've coached enough where you kind of say, okay, we've coached these guys up. Here's what we got. Here's our weaknesses. Here's our strength. Some of these comments in the chat today are premature to me. But you tell me, maybe they're not. When do you think what you got for a team? Because I don't think we know what we got for a team. We've had too many people hurt. We are not that deep on the bench. I think we're the weakest depth situation in a few years. When do you think you know what you got as a team?
Well, I think you made a big point. They haven't had a full team, and when you have a full team and something like this happens, then you've got more concern. And I don't think we can downplay not having Connor in there. I think that was significant, and obviously we haven't had Chris for a while. So time's going to tell. I think when we get them all back and get them healthy and get a chance to practice with everybody for timing and the same thing on the defensive end. Defense is team, and you gotta work on that with the other 4 players that are playing with you. So until we get a chance to see them at full strength through an extended period, we're not going to go. And if we don't get to be full strength, then we got problems.
Corey, I always like when you want to win and you want them bad, and I do too appreciate your always pushing Iowa athletics to be better. I'll hang up and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thanks, Lemansky.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, we got lots of people here still waiting to jump on. Thank you to everybody for being patient. Spot wants to know, do you still stay in touch with Dr. Tom? I think you do, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yep. Good man. Yeah, we have phone conversations, and I got to play with him at the Chris Street tournament in August, and his birthday was not too long ago, and contacted him then. And yeah, it's always fun to get a chance to chat with him.
What would he have said today? I mean, how would he have handled this situation late in the game?
Yeah, Tom was, he was a guy that could really, really keep his cool when things were going south in a hurry. I think he would have been disappointed. I think a lot of it depends, Corey, on how the practices went. I mean, if the practices were really bad leading up to this game, then he would have been real upset. And we got what we deserved. If he felt like practices were pretty good and it was one of those nights that just kind of snowballed and the effort was decent, then you got to be realistic and you got to be honest. You can't be fake. If you're fake, then players will read that. And so we're not privy to how practices went. I know practices are tough this time of the year because you don't have them, and this is just compounding through finals, and it's not an easy time to play. But I know that sounds like an excuse, but this is the time of the year where you see a lot of upsets.
That's actually exactly what was said here. Let me see if I can find the guy. Somebody, Commander Cody says, I listened to the presser. Fran wasn't yelling, said games this time of year can be tricky. I don't doubt that. I mean, I understand also this comment from Ari.
Well, you're dealing with 18, 19, 20-year-olds there. They can't wait to get home for Christmas. They've just got through finals. This team is 3-9. They're terrible. And then you got a couple of injuries. Oh, that's okay. Well, and then just, everything's just a little bit off, and then it snowballs. I mean, that's what happened. The game was lost like in a 4, 5, 6 minute period where it was tight, and then all of a sudden it's 10. And if they'd have gone the other way, then they would have survived, or if they could have jumped on them in the second half and gotten a bigger lead, which they didn't do. And some of it's, they mentioned that they might have taken them a little bit lightly, but this is the time of year when you take teams lightly, and they learned a valuable lesson.
Ryan wants to know, do you think the Iowa coaching staff even scouted Eastern Illinois if they're that bad? Well, they would have scouted them, right? Somebody's always got. They're not just sitting around. That's
the last thing you don't want. If you don't scout them, then what's your team going to think? Well, if they're not going to scout them, they must really be bad. So no, I would be shocked. That's a good, strong staff. I'd be shocked if they weren't well prepared. I think they didn't do a good job of preparing themselves. My guess is if you ask the players, they'll take more blame for it than they will give excuses, whether it's coaching or the time of the year they're playing. They just didn't get it done.
There will still be the people that say this, and I can understand it. I think I agree with it to an extent. There are no excuses for it. It doesn't matter who is out. The bench should beat this team by 50. I mean, that.
That's probably true, and Brad probably would have happened 9 out of 10 times. But unfortunately, this was the one time it didn't.
Yeah. I know some Iowa fans would say, "Well, we've said that before. We said that last March." But, anyways, let's get to Doug. Doug, were you at the game, buddy?
Nope. Again, I shut everything down for the day here in Ames, and just wanted to, be safe. And yeah, I got the Big Ten Plus, so that's no reason I didn't want to waste my money on the Big Ten Plus. That's also something I'm not very happy with. But one of the games I was thinking about, Coach, that you coached, UC Riverside. Remember that game?
There you go. We mentioned it.
We said that earlier. Yep.
Oh, we did. Yeah, I was trying to go through some. Campbell, a couple years ago under Fran, Omaha. Yeah. I went to that game. That one was bad.
Yeah, I mean, South Dakota State was there for – South Dakota State's a good program. You mentioned Uno, Campbell, Gardner Webb. They almost lost to Gardner Webb. I brought that up earlier, but they found a way to win that game. Yeah, you're right. And then they lost to – who'd they lose to down in the 2017 team? Was it Louisiana Lafayette? They lost to them down in Bahamas or somewhere. So, yeah, there have been bad losses. I just don't know of an example of any of those. I don't think even Campbell. That Campbell loss was bad. I don't think Campbell was near the bottom of Division I in offense and all these ratings.
Yeah, whenever they were saying somebody's going to the line, they're like, this guy shoots 60%. Jess would be like, this guy shoots 60%. Goes and makes both of them. This guy, you can't hit a three-pointer if his life depended on. Sinks it. I mean, it was a fluky game. And like I said, I put in the chat, it was 8,000 for the money line for that game. That's unbelievable. Meaning, if you bet it $100, you got $8,000. If I'm right, I think I'm right. Yeah. So like that, somebody over in Eastern Illinois made some money. They cheer for their Panthers.
Yeah, $100 a blow. Yeah.
What kind of an idiot is putting $100 on Eastern Illinois?
Well, $10. What you get for $10 is $800. Yeah. I have a friend that does long shots like that all the time. He bets money line on every one of those things, and I go, you never will hit. Like Eastern Illinois, I mean, you're just wasting $10. He goes, only have to happen once. Once covers 20 of them, and this is the one that covers 20 of them because he always says that too. He always goes, well, I only have to hit on one. Which is a question I have for you, Coach. And it's kind of a personal question. So with Tom Davis, and have you ever seen the 30 for 30 with Tom Davis and about the Boston College point shaving thing and the Goodfellas? How that you ever talked about that?
I've seen some of it, but I have not seen all of it. Yeah, that was a tough time, no doubt. So I'm not real knowledgeable on the whole deal. And no, he never talked to us about it.
I imagine he wouldn't have. Yeah. I understand. I wasn't sure if maybe Bruce would have. Since he wasn't. That's the thing about. I'm not accusing anyone of anything here today, but I'm just like saying these things happen, and you know.
Well, now they have FBI agents come in and talk to the teams, and it's much more covered. Back then, you know, they could have done stuff like that. You wouldn't even know what was happening with the way, you know, however you want to call it, the mob, or, you know, works in terms of that kind of situation. And there's all kinds of examples of that. So as a coach, it's tough because you're not with them 24 hours a day. So you gotta keep your eyes and ears open, but sometimes even that's not enough.
Do you feel that it is something that should be legal?
What's that?
Sports gambling?
Well, it is in certain places, right? I'm not a. Probably if it's legal, it makes it a little more easier to control, I would guess. I guess that would be my answer off the top of my head. I really don't claim to be an expert.
Yeah, I'm sorry for getting off topic on something.
No problem.
Again, I was just trying to get my head off of the game today, think of something else. But I would recommend that 30-for-30 to anybody.
What's it called?
Well, the 30-for-30 is called Playing for the Mob, and it deals with Coach Davis' 1979 Boston College team. Anyone that's seen the movie Goodfellas, that's actually how Henry Hill actually got taken down. So was because of, and it has the 30-for-30 has Bruce Pearl in it. It has several of Dr. Tom's players from before he came to Iowa. You didn't meet Dr. Tom until like 85 or 86, right?
No, I was 83 at Stanford.
Okay. Yeah. His first year at Stanford?
His second year.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come upon that job? Sorry for taking over, Corey.
Well, to make a long story short, I was actually coaching high school in Tucson, Arizona. My first coaching job out of college, my first year. And that was the year that Tom got the Stanford job. And I was at a private school, and the guy that was the head of admissions played for Tom at Lafayette, which was his first head coaching job. And I had him as my assistant, and he always would kid, you should go see a real coach. And so when Stanford came to play the two Arizona schools, we went to watch him play. And at that time, my goal was to be a college coach. So in the summertime, I would go work college basketball camps and just try to network and meet people and, you know, get my name out there. So I asked him after the second game, could I come work their camp? That's spring and summer. He said, sure. So I went and worked the camp. And during that week of camp, one of his coaches quit and left. And so I went up to him right away. I said, hey, I'd love to be on your staff. You don't even have to pay me. I'd love to be on your staff. And he kind of, you know, I think he kind of rolled his eyes, you know, what's going on here. Said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll watch you during camp, and then we'll talk after camp. I said, great. So the one great move that I made is when we had the draft of camp players, I took his son first, Keno.
Yeah.
And he'll come and watch him play a little bit. So I took him first and played him a lot till he dropped. And then after the camp, I went up to him and said, hey, I still want to come. And I'm telling you, you don't even have to pay me. And he said, well, I tell you what, why don't you go home and write me a letter as to why you want the job, and then we'll talk. And I think he figured I probably wasn't going to go to that. And I wrote him this big, long handwritten letter. And he called me up a week later and said, you're on, and I'll even pay you a little bit. So that's how.
Well, you were with them for like 16 years, weren't you, then?
Yeah, 16 years, exactly.
Yeah, that's a long time to I've never had a coworker for 5. So that's pretty
well, how lucky was I to get that guy as your first boss? I mean, that's as good as it gets.
My last thing is, though, for Corey, you're doing amazing. This had to be a long, long day. We appreciate you taking your time. Football recruiting is something I don't even want to halfway think about. I mean, it's easier for basketball when there's only 13 scholarships, but 105 people, 85 scholarships. I don't know how you keep track of all the players, the transfer portal. You're doing an amazing job, and I just want you to know that we appreciate your long days like today. So,
well, that's why he's getting paid 6 figures to do that kind of stuff. So.
You need to give me Dr. Tom's number. Maybe he'll take a chance on another young guy.
There you
I appreciate that, Doug. And yeah, it's it's National Signing Day it's like I told my wife, National Signing Day is once a year. Thankfully, I don't have to do this every week because I wouldn't be able to. But I enjoy talking to the athletes. I enjoy, I enjoy all that. But it's been a long day, so I appreciate that, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
I think we lost Doug there at the end, but no, I appreciate Doug being here. All right, we coming up to our hour here, so we need to kind of go rapid fire on these things here. Yes, please hit the like button. Lemansky reminding everybody we got about 100 people on still. Lemansky, thank you. Please hit the like button. Chad says, what's the timetable for Connor's return? I don't know. Have you heard anything, Gary?
No, I didn't even hear anything. I wasn't sure what was the deal. Was he sick or was he hurt? I didn't.
Well, remember, you remember the ice on his wrist against Southeast Missouri. You remember that, right?
No, I don't. I don't remember that either.
Okay, yeah, he had ice on the wrist against Southeast Missouri and never came back.
At the end of the game? Oh, okay. Yeah. I got to pay more attention during timeouts.
Pete says, did Josh O get any minutes today? He got 3 minutes. I'm not ripping on Josh O, but the fact that Ogundele can't get more than 3 minutes against Eastern Illinois when the team is playing this bad and you're down 2 guys, you're just, again, we've said it over and over again, you're probably not going to be able to count on him for much of anything moving down the stretch. Nothing personal, but that's just the reality of it. Bob says, does Iowa have a defensive-minded coach on the staff? It's probably much more fun to coach offense. I've asked you that question before, Gary. I doubt Courtney Eldridge, who played for Fran, is a defensive-minded guy. Matt Gatens, although he played for Todd Licklider, I don't know that you consider him a defensive-minded guy. He was a shooter in college. Don't know as much about Sherm. Maybe you can tell me about his background. But Fran is an offensive coach, right? I mean, I don't know how else you can put it. How people ask you that question? What's a good way to answer?
I don't know. I don't know. I've been to enough practices to I don't want to give out an opinion when I'm not around to know what's going on teaching wise, and I don't know the breakdown of responsibilities of the staff, things like that. So, yeah, I don't know.
DC Hawkeye, Coach Close must be getting short on lipstick trying to put so much on the pig. Jesse Jesse says it's a tough stretch coming up too. Nebraska, Penn State on the road, Indiana at home. You get Chris back. I know this sounds ridiculous, but you get Chris back. What if they go 3-0 to resume conference play? We're singing a different song here in a couple of weeks. Like I say, is it possible that in March we look back and say, well, that really sucked, but it doesn't matter?
Well, that's what you hope, and that's the only way you can look at it as a player. You got to, hey, we screwed up. We were not ready. We did not execute, and if that happens in the Big Ten, we got no shot. So hey, you got to look yourself in the mirror and how can I get better as an individual, and then how can we get better as a team? And like I said, this might be, hey, sometimes coaches can tell you're not playing very well, but you're winning and you're going, yeah, right. And then all of a sudden you need one of these to really hit home. And I'm sure this will hit home.
Kyle says, Philip said the practices were bad leading up to the game, so they got stops in practice, but more because of missed shots and not defensive principles. That sounds like some of Iowa's games where, you kind of have to, especially some of these early games, you kind of have to examine it with a fine comb, if you will, because just because a team isn't scoring doesn't mean you're playing great defense. Is that fair to say, Gary?
That's exactly right. You're looking at the quality of the shots. And if they're making tough shots, then, hey, you tip your hat to the offense. If they're missing wide open shots, I think we probably showed more clips of wide open shots being missed than we showed tough shots being missed, because hey, you can't live like that. I mean, eventually it's going to catch up with you, and it did today. They're not a good 3-point shooting team. They shot 40% because they had a lot of open looks, and they're Division I players. They may not be very good, but you can't. If you leave people wide open, whether it's around the rim or from three, you're really rolling the dice.
I want to take a moment to thank Iowa Floor covering their tough core click together 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring being sold at $269 per foot with self-installation down in Bondurant. If you're undertaking a project during these cold months, give Iowa Floor covering a call or visit their website, iowafloorcovering.com/DIY. And they sponsored basically all of our show earlier, our college football, Iowa football recruiting show. So appreciate Iowa floor covering. And each and every week, I give a shout out to Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm. Call him to get a quote on insurance, 515-256-6480. So important that you're dealing with people who care about you and your needs when you're talking about insurance quotes. Give Brad a chance to serve you and your family better. Visit him online at bradvanmeter.com or in person at 4229 Fleur Drive in Des Moines. And we are finishing up here. Kyle's been on hold forever. Kyle, you look like you're about ready to fall asleep, Kyle.
I just like I had energy after seeing that score, but man, it just sucked all the energy out of me, man. It was such a shock.
Shock's a good word.
Yeah. It's so as far as the history of it, I was reading some stuff for fun. It was confirmed to be the worst spread loss since the spreads had been tracked for the last 30 years, according to one website.
Wow. Well, there you go.
And it was the worst KenPom loss in KenPom history. So there you go.
Wow. That really does put it in perspective. That really does.
And the guy that said the Houston Eastern Carolina loss, he thought that was bad. ECU is ranked 155 in KenPom to finish that season, so not even close.
Gary, do you think there's a chance that somebody from the Iowa, now I'm going to put myself on a pedestal, do you think somebody from the Iowa basketball team came across my video where I was just talking about how terrible Eastern Illinois was? Maybe I contributed to this whole thing, Gary.
You might have. Or maybe the players all listened to you. In fact, my guess is they probably did, and you deserve a little bit of the blame.
Fran's probably putting my show up on the big board.
Saying, hey, you guys quit listening to that Corey Brada. He's putting bad stuff in your head.
I'll be getting ripped here soon, Kyle.
Yeah, they and the other funny thing I thought was when I was looking at KenPom and some of the other net metrics, they have estimates for like what the point spreads would be if certain teams played each other, and it estimated that Cal and Louisville would be between 15 and 20 point favorites on a neutral court against Eastern Illinois.
Yeah, but on a neutral court. And
on a neutral court, so they'd be 20 point home favorites. 20 points.
This is supposed to be a home court.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it turned out to be kind of a neutral court game, but
yeah, it's the worst.
It probably would have been better playing on a neutral court.
Maybe so.
You're right, and it is absolutely the worst loss of any. Kyle, you're a little younger than me, I think, but probably the worst loss you've ever experienced as an Iowa fan. I mean, it's not the most consequential. Like, I'd rather lose this game than to Richmond, but it is far as just ridiculousness. It's the worst loss ever.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you look through all the, like, if you were to go search, like, hey, what are the worst losses in NCAA history? All the websites come up with tournament teams. You made a good point earlier. Like, all those are two tournament teams. Like, they might not be like teams that you've heard of, but they made the tournament by winning their conference championship. Like, so as bad as they might have been, they beat some competition.
Yeah. Well, you just expect teams in the tournament to be ready to go, even if they're because they know if they lose, the season is over. Yeah. Whereas this game, there's another day. So thank goodness.
What in a game like this, Coach? So I've got two questions for you. Number one, we kind of have two separate approaches. I know we're nowhere near the level of Iowa basketball, but after performances like this, it either goes one of two ways. We either get a big lecture and a massive week of practice up until our next outing.
Wait, hold on. I don't think Gary knows that Kyle here's a college golfer, so he golfs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Nice.
So
where do you golf at?
Sorry, what was that?
Where do you golf?
About an hour south of Chicago, called ONU. It's a smaller school.
Oh, okay, cool.
So, but we either get a big lecture, and we don't get to choose anything we do in practice. It's drill after drill after drill till our hands bleed, or it's you guys need to step away, take a break, clear your mind, that kind of thing. Where do you fall on that spectrum, or do you kind of play it by ear?
Yeah, I think you got to kind of go with your gut, and a lot of it has to do with preparation, effort, what's coming ahead. Now they've got a little bit of a break, but I'm guessing they're going to send them home for a few days for Christmas, and that might be good. They can just, it ruins their Christmas. Trust me, it's not going to be as nice a Christmas as it would have been if they'd have won. And then I think when you get back, you just kind of reset the slate and, hey, let's go. And I wouldn't be surprised if they may show a little bit, but they may just throw the whole thing away and just, hey, it was just bad. And, if it's during the year and then I think you try to do some real good teaching and you get stuff. The greatest teacher is watching on video. The video doesn't lie. And you can put up clips of a lack of effort. You can put up clips of where they're not rotating and where they're not getting back and quick bad shots. And that hits home. And then it's up to the player to change and get better. And if they don't, then you really got a problem. I think the character on this team is such that I think they will. But my guess is, with the Christmas break, there probably won't be a whole lot. Maybe a little video when they get back, but they got the Big Ten season right around the corner, so they can't spend a whole lot of time on this, or then they're going to lose to Nebraska, and then all of a sudden it's even more of a problem. So my guess with this situation, they're just going to flush it.
Yeah, and they one thing I thought was pretty glaring on the stat sheet was, I think if you added up the bench points, rebounds, assists, it was like Eastern Illinois had I think it was 54 bench points, 22 rebounds, and 9 assists against Iowa. Iowa had 10 bench points, maybe 9 rebounds and 2 assists. I mean, the bench production was ridiculously different. And I think
that's partly because Connor and Chris aren't playing, so now bench guys are starting, and it's going to. And we weren't, and Iowa's not very deep to begin with, so it puts a lot of pressure on the guys that are starting.
It puts pressure on two. You know who it puts pressure on? It puts pressure on 2 freshmen, Josh Dix and Desante Bowen. Those are the only 2 guys coming off the bench, unless you want to count 3-minute Josh Agundale.
No, that's it. Yeah, that's it. So that's where they need those other guys back to improve their depth and in their bench play.
Yeah, I mean these games too. I mean I thought it was interesting. Like Fran did not play Riley Mulvey at all. Didn't play Josh Agundale more than 3 minutes. I mean there were still a couple of guys that didn't get any significant minutes, despite them only having maybe 9 or 10 available players.
Well, when Riley played in any consequential minutes all year.
Well, that's the deal, and they fell behind, and so now you're going to put them in to try to catch up, or you're hoping that you can get your better players to get going. So I don't fault that. I think if they'd have played better, those guys probably would have played more minutes. But the opportunity went by the boards when they caught up. I don't know. By the first TV timeout, it was back to being a game. Now those guys are done. They're not playing because we got to win this game.
Yeah, I thought it was shocking that. We know they're not a deep team, and losing 1 or 2 guys in an 8-man rotation is just killer.
It is. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, even in the NBA we see it too. Like I remember when D'Antoni was coaching for the Houston Rockets, they had a playoff series against the Warriors where they lost 1 or 2 guys, and they literally in 48-minute games they were playing 7 guys. And they lost those 1 or 2 guys and cratered in the series because they
got guys playing out of position, and it just kind of snowballs.
They had no trust in anybody.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Anything else, Kyle?
What the only question I have about the depth, Corey, is: do you think that is what has caused us to get to this point where we're so shallow?
What has caused us to get to the point? I'd say, Gary, besides just obvious injuries tonight, in general, you got 2 big men who haven't developed. I don't know how else you can put it. You took one of them back. I'm not blaming Fran for doing that. He opted to take Josh back. They tried to get somebody in the portal. They were not able to do so. They opted to take Josh back, and now they're locked in. So here's the deal. You take Josh Agundale back. Here's what that does, Gary, and I think I'm correct in saying this. You're not only committing to Josh Agundale that, yes, we want you back this season because we don't have any other options. They can't just drop his scholarship after this season if he doesn't develop, right? Now he's locked in for the rest of it until he graduates, correct?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think that's the decision that they made. I think I think you're accurate on that. I think you're right. Those 2 guys have not developed as I think they'd be the first to say they have not developed as quickly as they would have liked. That happens in every program. It's just that's especially with big guys. Big guys are hard to evaluate. And I think the other thing is they got 2 guys playing on 2 other teams that could still be playing in Nunji and the kid at Kentucky. And, Iowa can't afford to lose guys like that. Nunji's dad dies. He wants to get closer to home. And, that's some of that stuff's just out of their control. And then you, as you mentioned, the injury. So it's a combination of a lot of things that all come together and really make it stand out.
And I don't think when Keegan Murray came here, they expected him to be done in 2 years, Kyle. That's
exactly right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just I have my roommate from last year. He's a massive Illinois basketball fan, so I keep up with them a lot. And they've had a couple close games against kind of no name teams. And Brad Underwood has gone to like the 10th, 11th man on the roster to give the starters a kick up the butt. But I mean, it's partially like, hey, he wants to give them a kick up the butt, but he still trusts those guys to go in and not tank a game when everybody's getting tight. I mean, he's like, he puts that 10th man in and he's chewing the starters out while they're sitting on the bench, waiting for them to go back in the game. But because I watched some of those games and it's just such a discrepancy when they just won't pull anybody off the bench.
Well, Kyle, and I don't think it's for lack of effort. I think with Iowa football, maybe it's a different story. Fran is in the position that Fran is going to be in the position that Kirk is in now, especially if Chris leaves early. Fran's going to have to go to the portal. Like, you're not going to, like last year would have been nice to get a big man and they're going to survive without him. Again, it would have been really nice. They're going to have to use the transfer portal this next season because you're likely to lose somebody via the portal. If you lose Chris, you're going to lose Connor. Your big men aren't developing. You've already lost Keegan. They're going to have to do that, and likely at that position. I don't think you count on a freshman Owen Freeman coming in next year to just all of a sudden be your starting big man. Phillip is gone too. That's not Phillip was right now. Phillip Rebracha is the best player on this team.
Best player on the team by far. We got to keep giving that dude his props.
Yeah, there is no question about that, and I love Tony Perkins. Right now,
is his eligibility done? He doesn't have a COVID year.
Yep, he's gone.
No, this is his COVID year.
This is COVID year. Yeah, they got some work to do.
No, they will have to go to the portal, Kyle.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to be left with Bowen, Patrick, and Perkins, basically. Those are their 3 key contributors that are going to be left.
Sanford.
And Sanford, yeah. I mean, wouldn't say he's playing great basketball either.
Yeah, disappointing too, coming off that game against Southeast Missouri, where we thought maybe a coming out party, and Sanford goes 5 for 14. I mean, I guess it could be worse, but not you'd expect him to ride that momentum, Gary, and it didn't happen today. And boy, tough way to go into the break.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm sure he's the type of kid that's driving him crazy. And that's part of, it's like you miss 3-foot putts a few times, or all of a sudden you just, man, there's nothing is working here. And I'm putting in the effort, and I don't think it's a lack of effort. I don't think it's a lack of skill. It's a growing process that's tough. I mean, it's just tough.
There's
and when somebody
get through it.
3-foot putts missed, Kyle. I'd rather miss a 3-pointer than basketball than a 3-pointer.
It's a lot less embarrassing. I could say I'd rather airball a 3-pointer than miss a 3-footer.
But it happens.
It happens.
What is the percentage of professionals that make 3-foot putts?
3-foot putts are about 96% on the PGA Tour. The Tiger Woods had a stretch in his prime where he had about 1,500 3-footers in a 5-year span, and he missed 2 of them. That was as good as it gets. So, one of my favorite stats because it shows.
Maybe I should say 5 putts.
Yeah, 5-foot putts is about 90 or 87% probably.
Okay.
Really, that high?
Yeah, it's for the tour guys. I'd say for us, if I'm 80%, I'm
going to check that. I'm going to check that and let you know next week.
Kyle, appreciate you jumping on.
All right.
Thanks,
good,
Kyle. Merry Christmas.
Yep.
All right. Last word goes to Tony. We're going to have to be quick here because Gary's already gone over time. DC Hawkeye. Thank you. I appreciate you being here, DC Hawkeye. And, again, I say this all the time. I am a fan at heart, so I try to be objective coming on here. Sometimes Gary thinks I'm a little bit too objective or maybe a little bit too negative with certain things. I don't know how to sugarcoat a loss like this. There's really no way to sugarcoat it. Like I say, you can bring out all the lipstick you want, Gary. You know.
I tried.
It's still a pig. If it runs like a pig, if it smells like a pig. Anyways, last word goes to Tony. Tony, welcome back.
Hey, one thing that I kind of this brought back memories to was I think it was 2015. We played Augustana College, which was a D2 school, and we lost to them in an exhibition. That game didn't count, but so that doesn't go on the record books as what would be considered, the worst loss in history. But that reminds me of that. And then I also look back on the
at least Augustana.
Oh, they were a powerhouse. Yeah. They were a
Good
powerhouse.
coach, by the way. Really, really Greg Giovanni, great coach.
And then I look back.
Worked for Lute Olson.
I look back at that Gardner Webb game you were talking about. We had 18 points at halftime, and we were down 38-18. And we did come back, win by 10. That year, we went to the NIT, made a deep run. The other year that I was talking about, I think we snuck into the tournament.
And the year they lost to Louisiana Lafayette, they were awful. And they
Louisiana Lafayette, I actually looked that up. Look this up after the show, Corey. Louisiana Lafayette finished 69 in Ken Palm that year.
Okay.
So, I mean, they're not as bad. Like, we remember these because we look at, like, the bad, they're from a bad conference or whatever. But I went back all the way from Ken Palm, like callers have said. This is by far the worst loss, and it's not even with 100 ranking points or however you want to say it. Like spots in the rank. But I'm still going to watch every game. Still going to try to come to every call-in show that I can, and it can't get any worse. How's that for a pause?
It could get worse. Iowa, loses in the tournament to a 14. That is worse. Regardless of how bad the loss is, Gary, and it may be the biggest upset in the history of Iowa. It's most certainly it is the biggest upset in the history of Iowa by the numbers. You mentioned the UC Riverside game. It may be the biggest upset in the history of college basketball. That argument could be made. Yeah. But the bottom line is, I would rather lose this game in December than lose any game in March, any game in the tournament. And I'll say this too, as much as people don't want to admit this, people who are fed up with Fran, and there are those people who are watching this show because I see them in chat, the bottom line is, I still think this team has a chance to be a tournament team. And I would not be surprised, Gary, if they come back and rattle off 2 or 3 straight coming out of the break. I would not be surprised at that at all. So,
they got to get healthy. They got to get those two guys back. And probably if that had been a Big Ten game today, they both maybe have played. They kind of rolled the dice to get through it, and it didn't work. And put it behind you and get better.
In 10 years.
It exposes things that they're not very good at.
Yeah.
And now's the time to find that out rather than waiting for Nebraska or down the road. They now, if they didn't believe the coaches, they do now. And now they got to go to work.
And let me just say this. I acknowledge the fact that I think they'll bounce back. I'm not dismissing the fact, as you just said, Gary, they got things to fix. This isn't just a matter of you could call it a fluke all you want, but they got defensive issues, and today is not the first day those defensive issues have been rearing their ugly heads, and they've had improvement here that they got issues that they got to fix. So I have confidence they'll fix those issues to a degree, to the point where they can bounce back and still be a tournament team. Tony?
And I'll just say 2 things. In 10 years, I think people will remember UMBC more than they'll remember Eastern Illinois, because like you said, I'd rather lose a game like this in December that's worst loss ever than lose as like we lost to Northwestern State, or being the first one to lose to a 16. And I'll close with Cal watch. They're playing currently, and they're up 9. We could have a Cal victory tonight.
And can we ever make fun of Cal again? Can we ever make fun of Cal again? I don't.
No, we can't. No, we can't. But I just had to up.
Just so you know, I'm never bringing Cal or Louisville up again this year. Not ever. I'm not going to bring them up ever again. So, anyways, Tony,
I just want to let you know they're going to get off the schneid tonight. It looks like
good for them. Good.
We'll see you guys. We'll see you guys next year. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
All right, sounds good.
And we'll see you then.
Thank you, Tony. So to wrap this thing up, folks, we'll just briefly run through. If you're just joining us, or if you were working, boy, can you imagine coming home to work, turning on your phone and seeing this? Final score: Iowa 83, Eastern Illinois 92. We talked about rebounding. Iowa out-rebounded by one of the worst teams in Division I. I think it's fair to say they were out-rebounded 42-38. How that happens on a home court, I don't understand. You mentioned free throws.
The other team shot 60%.
Well, yeah, that's part of it, isn't it? Big part of it. Free throws, Iowa was 20 of 32 from the free throw line. Eastern 14 of 22. Hawkeyes made 7 of their 33 threes. Eastern made 6 of their 15. So you see a discrepancy in attempts, but Eastern was efficient from behind the arc, and probably
They didn't have to shoot a lot of threes because they got a ton of layups.
20 assists for Eastern. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, 20 assists for Eastern compared to just 14 for Iowa. Hawkeyes only turned the ball over 11 times to Eastern's 17. So they won the turnover battle and still managed to lose. That's
well, they had 12 in the first half when they were up 8. They only had 5 in the second.
This is ridiculous. Listen to this stat, and you just said the number of layups. How many points do you think they scored? How many points do you think Eastern scored in the paint in this game?
60 something.
Well, that's more than it is. 52 though. That is ridiculous. I mean, 60 or 50. That's
and then you count. That's true. Then you count times where they got in there and got fouled and went to the free throw line. Those don't count. They got way too many.
And
like we mentioned, not only layups but unmolested layups, where they're not going to miss them.
You keep using that term.
It's different.
True, though.
If you're out there all by yourself, you're going to make that shot 99.9%. If you got somebody that's between you and the basket, then maybe it's only a 65% shot.
How many fast break points do you think Eastern had in this game?
Well, they had a few because they probably counted that against their press. I don't know. 30?
26 to Iowa's 7. To think that Iowa, this is a Fran McCaffrey team against one of the worst, that is a startling number. But I know it's a part of that's against the press. I get that.
Well, and the other thing is, it's when you're getting the ball out of the basket, it's hard to fast break.
Yeah.
When a team shoots 60% from the field, you're not going to get a lot of fast breaks.
Very strange happenings around these parts, folks. Philip Prabracha was great, 24 points, 10 boards, no assists. That's a little bit odd, given the fact that he's been flirting with triple doubles here or there recently. 0 assists for Philip Prabracha.
I think one of the things they'll look at is I think he got a lot of his points in the first half, and they got away from him a little bit in the second. And especially when you're not making threes, then just bury them inside and foul them out and just kick their butt in there. And Iowa didn't do that.
Patrick McCaffrey, 12 points, 13 boards for Patrick, 4 assists. By the way, Philip did have 4 turnovers. That's, I guess, an aspect of this we should point out. Aaron Eulis struggled, 2 of 10 from the field, 0 of 7 from 3. And by the way, Prabracha 0 of 1 from 3, Patrick 0 of 7 from 3. To go 0 for 14 between Patrick and Aaron, 2 guys that logged 30-plus minutes apiece, that's a problem. Tony Perkins, 15 points, 8 boards, 5 assists, 3 turns. Peyton Sanford, 18 points, 5 boards, no assists, shot 3 of 10 from 3. So again,
I think Fran mentioned there was a lot of one-on-one. You're not going to get a lot of assists when you're playing one-on-one.
DeSante Bowen, 8 points for DeSante, but the bench is short and a lot of pressure on 2 freshmen, him and Dix played just over 11 minutes, no points for Josh, and he hasn't gotten in the flow of things offensively yet. But he's got to play. I mean, he's got to play unless you're going to play Carter or play one of the big men more. And then Josh Gundala came in 2 points in 3 minutes of play. The Hawkeyes will be back in action the 29th, so a week from tomorrow. They'll get Nebraska. I think you're right, Gary, and you know this a lot better than I would, given your resume. This is a good time for them to get a break. Maybe just flush it, but regardless, boy, better now, like you say, than later in the season. And this was kind of their last chance to have a bad loss, if that sounds morbid almost. But you lose a Big Ten game, it's still a Big Ten game. This was their last chance to have an embarrassing loss. And you have to get out of the way, hopefully, and bounce back. Anything else before we head out, Gary?
Merry Christmas to everybody.
Appreciate that. And a reminder, I will be back next week. We will be talking with Coach Patterson. Stay tuned for the podcast with Coach Patterson as we preview Iowa, Kentucky. Gary and I will be back a week from tomorrow talking Iowa, Nebraska, hopefully talking about a bounce-back victory. Of course, recruiting coverage, Hawkeye coverage across the 3 major sports right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. And then post-game with Coach Patterson after Iowa, Kentucky, which is a week from Saturday. So plenty of coverage here, football and basketball. Portal still in full swing. And we got the signing. It's been weird. How about this, Gary? Yesterday and today, This is weird. Iowa lost, had I think the biggest recruiting loss in the history of the football program, in Caden Proctor decommitting and flipping. And then today they had the biggest upset in the history of the basketball. That's a weird 2 days. A lot of good from today with the signees that did lock themselves into their careers, but boy, weird couple of days.
Yeah, well, better days are ahead.
Better days are ahead. All right, folks, for Coach Gary Close, I'm Corey Bratta. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.